What's going on YouTube? It's your man Azrael, the one. Thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's been a while, few and far between from my nearest uploads, but I do appreciate everything that you guys do. You know how this works. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. If you like it, I definitely encourage discussion, and I would love to hear you guys' opinion on the topic I'm about to broach. Excuse me. Secondly, I do want to send out a shout out to Bianca Brooks, a little tongue-tied this morning, who sent me this video over Twitter, but I was unable to get the video done in time, and I haven't been able to retrieve the video link to make the video request that she made for me specific in this video. But I will address some of the things in that video she sent me today here in this one as a part of a larger picture. Finally, of course, if you guys want to send me story topics, the email will be put in the box below, as well as in the tail end of this video, where if you see something that you think is interesting to talk about, I definitely will bring it to the forefront in my videos. This is how it works. Fan engagement does make a difference. If you like the content, if you want to see more kinds of content, definitely we want to go ahead and start setting up this dialogue. Also, if you like me to continue this series, all I ask for is a simple 50 likes. This way I know you're enjoying the video, and this way in 50 likes I can actually take the time out and now delve deeper into some of these issues, mainly done by inductive reasoning. So of course 50 likes, and I will probably release the next one within a week and a half, 2 weeks at the absolute maximum. This is just the way to know that you guys are enjoying what I'm providing. Having said all that, I wanted to open up this video in this series. It's been a while since I put an entry under this heading. Once again, from taking a quote from an anime that has some relevance. Now, many of you guys may have heard of this anime called Rurouni Kenshin. Some of you may have not. If you haven't, but you have a soft spot for cartoons of any sort, I suggest that you watch it. There are plenty of videos here on YouTube that can get you started. It's a really great historical drama, although it's some fiction in there. Nevertheless, I digress. And this quote that I'm taking it from occurs during the Kyoto arc during a fight sequence between Saito Hajime and Usui Uenuma. And it goes like this. A mongrel dog that runs from battle without fighting should not bark. That's pretty deep. It's pretty impactful. Contextually, it had much to do with the two characters who were in a death match. But strangely enough, we can extrapolate that meaning to this pro-black conscious Negro who is talking the good talk. Now, let me explain what I mean here. When we examine in the last couple of weeks the unceasing trend of these pro-black, back to Africa, red, black, and green, fight the power Negroes, we notice that these are the mongrel dogs who will bark very loudly, but yet won't bare their fangs and get into a bloody foray. Now, before I really go any further, I need to point out here that I'm not encouraging anyone to commit acts of violence, but I'm only bringing this up to reference a point. Maybe you'll understand this later. These Negroes are the ones that say white supremacy is keeping us down, or we need to pick up arms and guns. But what we have seen, especially in the last couple of months, is a series of, well, disjointed ideas. And that they say the things that they wish to say to be riled up and to make themselves puffed up like snakes and frogs, trying to intimidate someone. But when push comes forward to shove, it's chillier than December. We only have to go as far back as the threats made against George Michael Zimmerman, and the threats made against Darren Wilson, and the threats made against so many other non-blacks who have taken the lives of blacks, and it was broadcast over national media. We saw it with the outrage at Ben Fields. But here's the funny thing that we didn't see. In that same school where Ben Fields was fired, there was a black student fighting a black security guard, and there was no commentary about that. In fact, there was another school video, I have it saved and I will try to get the link to you in the box from my Facebook, and where a black woman was beating up a student who got hands-on with her, and we didn't talk about that either. We didn't talk about how Eric Gardner, after 2 years, there's been no mention of any type of social change and justice that it's been talked about on a national level. In fact, we've also had during that time frame in the Bronx, a young black man was shot in broad daylight with his daughter in his arms. We've had a woman in the Fordham section of the Bronx throw her baby out of a window. We have women who have put their children in freezers, who have abandoned them at home to go party in the club, to come home and find their children dead. We have all sorts of tomfoolery occur. And yet the one common factor is that these pro-black, back to Africa, red, black, and green, conscious fight the power Negroes are not bearing their fangs at this. In fact, they fly from confronting the very issue in-house. And what it ends up happening is making those who truly desire a better community for blacks, well, it makes them look like simpering idiots. Scared to say what is truthful, to say what is right, to follow the inclination of justice. And justice must not be, of course, blind to one thing and in full fury for another, because it's not justice. It's simply cherry picking. It's being dishonest. We only have to go so far to notice that in the couple of weeks we've had parents come onto social media and embarrass their daughters over hygiene issues, for which, by the way, if your daughter has had this problem, ma'am, chances are A, the girl is probably pretty slow, or B, I'd have to wonder just how clean is your vagina. But more on that later. My issue here has always been, and is always going to continue to be, the disingenuous nature of the African American Negro when we contextualize his struggle and his pro-blackness to the fact that the American people, the American society, to include other blacks, are beginning to see these, well, how would I say it without being overly offensive? These salesmen of black salvation, these pimps and tricksters in true form, are manipulating and ramping up the masses in cahoots with this liberal media agenda, this leftist narrative, this leftist feminist and social justice narrative, this socialist contextualization. In other words, everything that takes away the very individuality of a person to use his reason and logic to solve his own problems, for using his emotions and to demand change, to be placated like some simpering little child. I know that's a lot for y'all to unpack here, but the very thing I want to bring to the forefront in this video, and this is probably what I'll do, is I'll make this a part one so that I don't keep you guys over long. These particular individuals who run from this is doing everyone that is black a disservice. Little Tyshawn, who was shot, you don't see the pro-blacks marching out saying no justice, no peace, we shall overcome, locking arms the way their forebears did to bring attention to an issue. Hell, even President Obama has not spoken out about this. He spoke out about Trayvon. Well, if Trayvon could be my son. What about Tyshawn, Mr. Obama? What about the little kid that was thrown out of the window, Mr. Obama? What about the young daughter who was stuffed in a freezer? Who the system for 11 fucking months had no idea where this child was? Where in the common factor in these ghetto homes that these children are growing up removed from their mother's homes several times and given back to the mother. Mr. Obama, please do not make statements this way. It is strongly encouraged that you do not make these kind of statements, because you are becoming the very face of an insidious problem in the black community. It's called being out of touch with reality. And that is what this Negro who says no justice, no peace is. He's out of touch with reality, because he will always walk out in the middle of a crowd with signs and banners in tow, screaming pigs in a blanket, pigs in a blanket, fry like bacon. But yet the very same Negro goes back to his community that's rife with prostitution, filthy streets, drugs, gangs. Yet he has no gumption, the wherewithal, and the gall, the summary testicular fortitude to challenge the very gang leaders, the drug dealers that are in his neighborhood. He is so afraid of the police because he has been force-fed a narrative that the police are out to get him. Yet when you show this Negro the statistics that more blacks kill each other than the police do, you might as well say his head spins around as if he was possessed by Pazuzu. We have this dichotomy in where it's okay to speak about one thing but not another. In these homes where these young black children are growing up, you saw it for yourself, and I'm going to come back now to this woman who has victimized her own daughter. This is not the first time this has occurred on social media, and let's be clear here. The daughter is either very slow, or you have not properly taught her proper hygiene. And I don't know this woman in any capacity. But then when she has been exposed for doing psychological damage to her daughter, instead of just taking the video down and shutting the fuck up and riding on, she doubles down. She comes back even harder, trying to be right. Miss, whatever it is that you think you're right about, under no circumstances do you ever do that to your child. I'm a father and I have 2 boys. And they're not even school-age children. And I loathe the idea of even raising my voice at my own children, because I believe in getting them to do what's right by respect, from them respecting, not fearing me. What you've done to this young girl is psychologically traumatized her. And what I want to know is, why hasn't the Department of Child Protective Services has gone into that home and removed that little girl? Because Lord knows, if this is the type of psychological trauma you would place on that little girl, who's to stop you from physically assaulting her? Who's to stop you from emotionally abusing her? Yes, I know this is a slippery slope. But all too often, little black children at some point in their lives suffer some form of abuse in some capacity. And most of it is at the hands of this black bitch called the single mother. You know, the black female who brings all sorts of dicks in and out of her house at all hours of the night, and their children are the ones that end up on the end of it. You know, the same black bitch who thinks more of going to parties and clubs and comes home to find her children burnt up in a fire or choked out by somebody else's kid. You know, the one that abandons their kid for a weekend for a foray with some thug ass slaying, all in the name of getting her shit wet. Meanwhile, her baby is at home starving and crying and full of shitty Pampers, and left for the neighbors to find. See, where I'm going with this point of the cursed mongrel, or rather the mongrel dog who runs from battle without fighting should not bark. See, when I say this, of course, not just me, but when Saito Hajime said this in the context of his fight with Usui, it had to do much with Usui's hatred for his own boss, and that instead of just admitting he was beaten, and instead of trying to fight and die an honorable death, he ran and deluded himself. So too does this pro-black deludes himself. He believes that if I speak loud enough and I act up and have tantrums, that people will just placate me, give in, Give me what I want so I'll shut the fuck up. Not so. Because what happens is the American people, whites, blacks, Asians, Latinos, Africans, Arabs, the world over begins to notice that these shines are just professional victims. Booker T. Washington, and I'm paraphrasing it, but I'll end the video with the actual clip so you can see it for yourself. Booker T. Washington basically pointed out that there is a class of Negro who trots out the struggles of the Negro people, partly because he has an issue and partly because it pays. So because it pays, he doesn't want to see these issues redressed, because guess what? If they are, he's out of a job. And yet there are those in the community that know this to be true. Yet they refuse to talk about it. They refuse to demand that these pro-blacks go into these black communities and raise the no justice, no peace chants when there are people doing things to other blacks. These pro-blacks are not saying these women who are harming their children, who have jobs, we need to report them. These women who are abusing their children on social media by embarrassing and humiliating them, we need to report them to their employers. We need to call Child Protective Services. None of that happens. For Christ's sakes, there was a disgusting pair of black women, mother and daughter, on camera with a little girl in the house, physically abusing and violating each other. And they thought this shit was normal. And they posted it to Facebook. See, these pro-blacks can talk about Egypt as if all black folks had a historical tie to the land of Kemet, which is not true. But these Negroes want to talk about how we were great kings and queens and all this nonsensical bullshit that has nothing to do with your current plight, Negro. This is why I said the mongrel dog that runs from a battle without fighting should not bark, because these are the Negroes who refuse to fight the real battle. The battle of drugs, the battle of poverty, the battle of declining family, the battle of fiscal irresponsibility, to correct these deficiencies. These Negroes do not want to talk about this, and they will never talk about this, people. These are the coons that ought to be put to the sword. As Christ said, I didn't come for this, but I came to set father against son, mother against daughter. Christ said, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. And that's what must happen here in the black community. Somebody, anybody, everybody that sees this problem must bring the sword now. It must come to a point where there must now be a clear divide. Those who would want to continue this bullshit narrative and live in a self-delusion, a delusion of their own making, a delusion so elaborate, yet so easy to destroy. And the black folk who just say, look, I just want to have a good life. I want to be able to come home where my children could grow up in a safe, secure, clean environment, where I know my spouse is for me. He or she is for my good. He and she is for my well-being, my mental stability, my happiness, as I am for their happiness. Where I can go out, if I can't find a job, where going into the world and creating a job is just as easy as finding one if necessary. What do I know? I'm just an ideologue. Stay tuned for part 2.